Hi there. You are listening to Beyond Distribution with GTDC podcast. I'm Kavita May with the GTDC. Today's episode was recorded live at our GTDC Vendor Summit, which was held on June 14th in the beautiful Dutch city of Noordwijk. In addition to wonderful sunsets, views of the North Sea, and great meetings, we were fortunate enough to hear from our senior distribution executives. This panel was titled IT Distribution in the Next 3 to 5 Years Through the Looking Glass. It was moderated by GTDC CEO Frank Vitagliano and featured panelists Alessandro Catani, CEO of Esprinet, Anton Herbst, who is the executive advisor for Tarsus based in South Africa, and Patrick Zammit, president of Europe and APJ of TD Synnex. Enjoy the discussion.
Well, we certainly heard a lot today, haven't we?
Lots of changes.
Yeah, a lot of changes. So, Alessandro, let me start with you. When we think about what's transpired, over the last couple of years, one of the things that strikes me is distributors have done I believe, a fabulous job of running your business. And it has been extraordinarily important to the IT supply chain, the work that's been done. But as we've heard today, there's lots of things to think about, lots of challenges on the horizon. So as you start thinking about, how you plan your business the next, let's say 3 years, because when you try to go past that, it's hard to do. But when you start thinking about what types of things that you think about and what's on your mind relative to that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for inviting us.
Yep.
Well, it all boils down to splitting our business into two broad categories. We think of technologies and vendors that are already well known, and those that are not yet well known. On those that are well known, our focus as distributors is to smooth the transition process from manufacturing down to end users, and therefore credit and logistics are historically key components. So we're really thinking of what's happening in the kind of, let's say, shipping technology. Here we see two trends, one on shipping boxes, the transition to more sustainable shipping. So how do we find ways of shipping products with hydrogen-fueled trucks or reduce anyhow the carbon footprint there? But the second point is there's an increasing amount of, let's say, intangible products, software, cloud. So here we are thinking about the logistics of bits rather than a logistics of atoms. So how do we have to change our warehouse, traditional warehouse, into, let's say, an IT system that turns into a warehouse? And that's on one side. The second side is, and it was rightly outlined just before our meeting here, we're heading into a world where money is no longer free. There's again scarcity on money, on credit lines, and the cost of that. So how do we find ways to properly allocate money, credit lines, and cost of that on our customers on behalf of our vendors? And that's on, let's say, well-known technologies and vendors. And then there's the enormous wave of new technologies and new vendors that are hitting the ground every day and are asking us to create demand and manage this complexity. And here we have sort of split the company in two. Last year we made 4.7 billion total. More than 1 billion comes under the brand V-Valley for us, where we manage data center products, server storage, networking, cloud, cybersecurity, software. But interestingly, 10% of our developers are maintaining and developing the platform through which we sell all these complex technologies, and namely cloud. And out of roughly more than 1,000 sales and marketing people, more than 650 are on that billion, and 400 are on the remaining 3.7 billion. So the big point for us is how we manage these complex technologies, how we help you vendors and our partners, customer partners, to address complexity, and especially the ecosystem, because it's hard to sell a single product by itself. You always have to mix it with other technologies. So those are the areas where we are putting our investments, where we're thinking what we can do in terms of innovation.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And when we look at the technology trends, which, you know, there's been lots of discussions. Patrick, I'll go to you next. And certainly those trends are leading to you having to make, you know, a lot of changes in terms of how you're thinking about investments, et cetera. But how do you see the channel evolving, you know, over the next 3 years or so? And what's happening there? Because that's part of this whole ecosystem, you know, that we talk about, right?
So, I mean, when you look at all those technology changes, it's a major challenge for the resellers, because basically their cash cows are not staying cash cows. They see their margins reducing, and on the other hand, they have to embrace the new technologies so that they can continue to flourish, if I can speak like that. And so, I mean, the other thing is also one of the key success factor going forward for them is to deliver business outcomes. You mentioned it this morning. So what we see more and more is that the resellers or the partners have to specialize, and they have to specialize to differentiate, to improve their profitability, but also to retain their customers. So what's interesting is that, and we just went through the exercise at TD Synnex, I mean, we see that the reseller base or the partner base is resegmenting, okay, and specializing either by technology, specializing by vertical. In more and more cases, the CIO is not only is no more the only decision maker. They have to deal with line of businesses, and so, I mean, clearly that specialization means that distribution has to look at the partner base also differently. And so what you see is that the distribution had to rethink the value prop by partner segment. Okay, and I mean, good examples in the prior panel. I mean, you have today distributors really specialized on security or cybersecurity, for example. It's a good example of it. In our case, where I mean, our ambition is to be end to end and to bring all the technologies to market. What we did is to reorganize the company along technologies. Okay, not losing the vendor focus, but reorganizing along technologies, thinking what is the value prop we need to deliver by technology, and then by customer segment, we revisited our customer segments. And again, I mean, the value prop for an ISV, for a traditional reseller, for an MSP is very different. And so we need to invest in services, in platforms, in new skills, you name it. And this is, I mean, happening across the whole distribution.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that's clearly happening, and some of it's caused by technology, but some of it's caused by also just the changing landscape, is the business models, Anton, are starting to change for the partner community, for sure, right? And the way products are delivered. And having spent some time in that space as a solution provider, I know how significant that could be. You know, just a change in how you manage cash flow and how you manage the business. What are your thoughts on how distributors can help with that process? Because we spend a lot of time with the vendor community, but we also need to spend a lot of time with our customers to help them with that.
Yeah, I think, firstly, I think we've got to define who's customer. We make a clear distinction in our business between customer and partner. In our world, the customer is the end user.
Yep.
And the partner is the reseller, and we're bringing the customer more and more into the frame. Now, I know everybody's going to say, are you selling directly? No, we're not selling directly.
Yep.
But we have to bring the customer into the frame if we want to understand demand better. The other thing that we're seeing is that the value chain is still intact, but the perspective has changed. We used to start with build and deliver and then take it through the value chain, ultimately delivering value to the customer. Now it's flipping the other way because the customer's got most of the power and we need to understand what it is that he needs. And it changes the perspective of the customer, of the value chain, and it also changes the competency that we need to actually understand that part of the value chain. So the scale benefits that's coming, that you used to get from economies of scale is still there. We're good at that. We're good at value chain optimization. But when it starts inverting, we've got to think very differently about it. So that's the one aspect. And then we've got this whole notion of ecosystem thinking coming into the market.
Yep.
I know a lot of people talk about ecosystems. I see very few of them that's actually ecosystems. At best, they're marketplaces. Marketplaces might go to platform if they can get to scale. And then we might start seeing some platform-based ecosystems. We're a long way off.
Yeah.
But that's still the thinking. And as we move from distinct product to as a service business model, the financial models change because we're steeped in return on invested capital. Distribution understands return on invested capital exceptionally well. We don't understand the free cash flow model that's required for the SaaS business so well. And the free cash flow model that sits there, and now we're running two business models inside one business. One is based on the return on invested capital, the other one's on free cash flow, which is driven by lifetime value of the customer over customer acquisition cost. Two very distinct business models that we need to run. And if you now take that one step down into the partner base, it's even more complex. So I think that for me is the complexity that we're facing. And so I think over the next, and we're talking 3 to 5 years out, I think distribution is going to develop in 3 areas. I think we're going to become demand engines, and we can call it insight engine or demand engine. We are going to become talent engines. And I think the third one that we're going to probably become a sustainability engines of some sort, because we're going to have to drive the change.
Yeah.
So those are the 3 things that I think we're going to work hard on in the next 3 years.
You know, it's funny, you hit all the key areas that, you know, we should be talking about, honestly. And so, you know, Patrick, I'll come back to you. And, you know, you mentioned marketplaces, you mentioned platforms. I certainly talked about them, you know, in my discussion. And it's very clear that how critical that is, you know, as we go forward. But I would also tell you that, you know, I still think we're in a murky period right now, right? In terms of how does it all play out and whose platform are we using? Vendors are putting marketplaces in place. Distributors are. We've got the hyperscalers, you know, making their investments. We've got partnerships kind of coming. You know, last year at this event, we had, in fact, you participated in a panel with GCS, right? We talked about what they're doing. So how do you see this playing out? I mean, if you looked out over the next couple of years, what's your view on how this is playing out, where the distributor fits in it, and how it all kind of evolves, if you will?
So first thing, I mean, as the industry is getting more software defined, okay, so the need for platform is going to continue to increase. And second, as the industry is moving to an OpEx model, so as a service, that means that the platforms not only are there to provision the software, but also, I mean, to provide many more services like, I mean, evaluating the consumption, the billing, and you name it. I mean, all of us have invested in platforms already 10 years ago. The whole trend started. And to be able to cope with the new requirements coming from the partner community and the vendor community. The thing which is accelerating as we speak, and I guess it's a little bit the elephant in the room, is the fact that the hyperscalers are coming up with their own marketplaces, and of course they have the scale. I mean, I'm going to quote Canalys. I mean, by 2025, they see the hyperscalers marketplaces delivering 45 billion of revenue. So you could say, is there a new competitor in the room? So future will tell. The thing is, so as far as we are concerned, we are looking at it. We see it more as an opportunity. So how can we complement our marketplaces with the marketplaces of our vendors, in particular the hyperscalers? But when you think about the value we have to bring to the market, I mean, if I attempt to make a comparison, I mean, when the industry was hardware focused, our logistic was critical. Today, as we are getting more and more software driven, the marketplaces are becoming more and more critical. But that's only a portion of the value prop we bring to market. What is very critical is the other dimensions, and I think those ones are not going to disappear. It's about recruiting the partners, it's about enabling the partners, it's about providing additional services. All those new technologies, in fact, are a fantastic opportunity to diversify the services and solutions we can bring to market. And that fundamentally, I don't think is going to disappear.
Yeah, well, I agree. And I would add one that I think is really important, and it's been built up over a lot of years, and that's trust. There's a level of trust that's been built up by the distributor community with their customers, with and I'll define customers, the solution providers. You've built that level of trust, and they've come to depend on that. My view is that that same level of trust has not been established anywhere else, and that I think will be the big differentiator as we go forward, because all of the other components are important, but there's a level of trust that matters, in our business. And you all have been doing what you've been doing for, varies, but let's call it 40 years in a lot of cases, and that's hard to replicate, very hard. So, sustainability area, Alessandro, is one that we've certainly had a lot of discussion about it today. But frankly, I give you a lot of credit because you were on the forefront of this. I know certainly with us and your advice to GTDC, 1 year ago, you sat in a room, and Patrick was in the room too, and Anton, and you really encouraged us to get engaged, to get focused, and to develop at least some process for having, transparency and collaboration. We'd like to think maybe we could make a difference and help get standards developed, et cetera, and maybe that'll come. But as you see this playing out for the industry and certainly for distribution, what are you thinking about? How do you view this for the next couple of years?
Well, I view it obviously accelerating for a number of reasons. There's lots of regulatory pressure, but I do believe in money. it's our business.
Which generation are you?
He's the generation that's going to pass it down.
Exactly. I have 2 kids.
Right, exactly.
That generation. No, in this sense, we're a public company, and I got wind of this revolution coming when I realized that the proxy advisors that are suggesting how to vote in AGMs came to us and said basically to our compensation committee, either you put a strong portion of your all members' compensation, and specifically my compensation, linked to sustainability topics, or we will vote against. And that's happening to all of your big customers, and also most of you vendors are public companies, to your CEOs as well. So if not for the regulatory, if not for not the toasting, as I've heard, just because of the pressure that will come from the top, these things will happen. And we see, therefore, a lot of activity over there. We see 2 things, an opportunity product-wise. There will be more and more products that probably will hit the ground, which will be sold not so much on their tech specifications, rather on their capacity to help the world as a whole to comply with the sustainability targets. So there's an opportunity there, but there are also opportunities or constraints from a procedural standpoint. We definitely need to work better on, let's say, the circular economy. So the ITAD processes, generally speaking, the capability of managing return of goods and scraping of goods in a sustainable way. And I mentioned it before also, all the processes that we do will have to go under further scrutiny I love being back in meeting personally people, but again, what's the impact of having all of us flying here? And so probably there will be a further round of reflections on how we manage our collective life and business style linked to sustainability. And I see this impacting our way of doing business, but generating opportunities, because most of the solutions to these new challenges will come from technology, and luckily for all of us, we are the ones that provide this technology. So I see opportunities in front of us, and big ones.
And I think that makes sense, yeah.
I would like to I would like to add something and to ask, in fact, so to the vendor community, because I fully agree. I mean, there is a big opportunity in the circular economy, and we want to participate with the vendor partners in that space. The big opportunity is if there is a secondary market for the devices.
Yes.
Okay, and so again, we need to speak about money. A secondary market for companies to develop a business model on it. The devices need to have a value on the secondary market. And I know it's a little bit counterintuitive, but in fact, the vendors play a key role, can play a key role in defining and maintaining a value on the secondary market for their devices. I mean, there's one vendor in particular in the mobile phone industry who has done a fantastic job. And so when you look at the duration of his devices is very long because of that. At the moment, so that's something, I mean, I'm bringing on the table every time we discuss about sustainability with the vendor partners, but it's a big ask. And in fact, I know we need to convince the CFOs at the vendor partners to make it happen, but without that, I think it's going to be difficult to support the circular economy. And it's not too complex to put in place, in fact.
Yeah. And that's linked as well, and you're perfectly right, to the fact that we are collectively being pushed to move from CapEx to OpEx, and to establish a good renting program, you need to give a value to the end of life. And that turns in a double opportunity, one of the circular economy, and the second one of creating a stream of predictable revenues for you as well. Once something of your products has been sold in a recurring model, it's easier to sell again the same product. So
it also changes the affordability profile.
Exactly.
And it expands the market, especially
Exactly.
if you come to emerging markets.
And they're
Those
profound
pricing.
changes. They're massive, massive changes. So kind of wrapping up a little bit, because we're kind of getting close on time, and we've got one-on-ones planned this afternoon, et cetera. Anton, let me just talk to you a little bit about a topic that is kind of out there, but there wasn't a lot of discussion today about cybersecurity, and I guess that's partly because it's just so important, and it's just so critical that, you know, folks are just kind of taken for granted that we need to keep thinking about it. But particularly with the transition to work from home and a lot of the things that are happening right now, I think the importance is increasing. And obviously the role distribution plays in this space becomes really, really important. What's your view on that, and how do you see that playing out over the next few years?
Yeah, I think we've got to be careful that we don't just see cybersecurity in isolation. It's part of a bigger technology play, and I think the sooner we start bringing it into every technology discussion from the get-go, I think we've got a better chance of actually making sure we live in a more secure world. Distribution, I think Alessandro verbalized it very well and eloquently in the beginning, is to say there's two kinds. We see a massive amount of people coming out of cloud-native cybersecurity solutions. Then requirements from distribution is very different, and we need different competencies to actually accelerate that process. And in some cases, some distributors might opt out of that process because they will leave it to the specialists, or depends on what your bent is, because that takes money. And typically those vendors don't have the MDF funds and stuff like that to help you develop the business. So that's a different motion. And then I think at the other end of the scale is the large established players. And there seems to be a lot of not concentration, but consolidation happening, and the growing bigger. And I think they have well-established routes to market with distribution. And I think distributors has got a very well-defined process for actually taking those products to market. So I don't, for me, it's more a question of which one are you going to choose. You're going to choose both, then you need two sets of competencies.
Yeah.
Because they're not the same.
Yeah.
And I think the cloud native space, we see a lot of solutions being developed in one of the hyperscalers and that going to market. If you look at companies like Wiz, and those kind of people out of Israel and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of that coming out. The question is, do we have a role, and what is our role in it? For me, it feels mostly like a channel dev role and a market dev role.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Comments, gentlemen? Yeah. Good. Well, look, that wraps it up. I also want to spend a minute and thank not just my panel, but all of the members of the GTDC that, and I mentioned earlier, that consistently help, Peter and Kavita and Anita and the team that we have on, how we develop our priorities and what we do, and the things that we're going to continue to do. So thank you for that, and I want to thank the audience for, one, your attendance, and two, your participation, and we're going to continue to work on improving, what we do. So we'll appreciate your feedback, at the end of the session as to some things that, you think we could do better and suits your needs. But we were really pleased to have you, and we think it's been a great, day and a half. We still got an afternoon of one-on-ones and a sustainability meeting and some more work to do. But thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here and be with you. Thank you.